The hum of the tattoo machine was a familiar, comforting sound in Alex's tattoo studio. The dimly lit and filled with the rich, earthy scent of ink and antiseptic, the shop was his sanctuary, a place where the outside world's troubles seemed to fade away. Alex had always found solace in his art, creating intricate designs that came to life on the canvas of human skin. Tonight, however, the atmosphere was different. A heavy, oppressive feeling hung in the air, and Alex couldn't shake the sense that something was off. He brushed it aside, attributing it to fatigue as he prepared for his next client. The bell above the door jingled, and a young man in his late 20s walked in. His eyes were bright with excitement, and he was clearly eager about the tattoo he had scheduled. He introduced himself as Leo and showed Alex a design he had been dreaming of for months. A detailed, almost geometric pattern that intertwined like vines around a central motif. Alex scrutinized the design, admiring its complexity. It was unlike any other request he had received, a perfect challenge for his skills. He nodded approvingly. "I can do this. It's a beautiful design." Leo grinned, his enthusiasm infectious. "I've heard amazing things about your work. I'm thrilled to finally get this tattooed." The session began, and Alex's needle danced over Leo's skin, carefully etching the design into place. As the hours passed, the shop's usual ambient noise seemed to recede into the background. Alex's focus was absolute, but a strange feeling lingered, like a shadow at the edge of his consciousness. Leo chatted amiably, sharing stories about his life and why this tattoo was so important to him. He talked about a recent trip he'd taken, the people he'd met, and the personal significance of the design. Alex listened, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease that gnawed at him. Finally, the tattoo was complete. Alex wiped the last trace of ink from Leo's arm and examined his work with satisfaction. The design looked even more impressive than he had imagined. Intricate lines and delicate shading coming together flawlessly. Leo admired his new tattoo in the mirror, beaming with pride. "This is incredible, Alex. Thank you so much. It's perfect." Alex offered a small, reassuring smile. "I'm glad you like it. It was a pleasure to work on." Leo paid and left, still glowing with satisfaction. Alex watched him go, feeling a flicker of unease as the door closed behind him. The shop fell silent once more, but the oppressive feeling remained, now more pronounced. As the evening wore on, Alex cleaned up his work area and prepared to close the shop. He checked the security cameras to review the day's activity, a routine he followed to ensure everything was in order. The footage showed Leo leaving the shop, but then something peculiar caught Alex's eye. The camera footage seemed to glitch for a brief moment, and when it cleared, Leo was nowhere to be seen. Confused, Alex rewound the footage and replayed it. There was no sign of Leo leaving the street or getting into a vehicle. He simply vanished into thin air. Alex's heart began to race. He checked the timestamps and replayed the footage again, hoping for a different outcome, but it was the same. Leo was there one moment and gone the next. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at the tattoo he had just completed, the intricate design now seeming almost sinister in its complexity. Was it a mere coincidence, or was there something more to the strange feeling that had plagued him throughout the session? Determined to find answers, Alex decided to stay late and investigate further. He rifled through old sketches and designs, looking for anything that might explain the unsettling events of the evening. But the more he searched, the more he felt a growing sense of dread, as if the answers he sought were just out of reach, lurking in the shadows of his own creation. As the night deepened, the shop's familiar hum seemed to grow louder, almost as if it were alive. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he had unwittingly become part of something far more disturbing than he could have imagined. The days following Leo's disappearance were filled with unease for Alex. The studio, once a refuge from the outside world, now seemed tainted by an invisible menace. Despite his attempts to brush off the incident as an anomaly, he couldn't ignore the growing number of missing persons reports that seemed eerily connected to his shop. Alex tried to keep busy, focusing on his work and avoiding the mounting anxiety. But as the days passed, more clients came in, and he noticed an unsettling pattern. Each of the new clients who requested the complex, custom tattoos similar to Leo's seemed to vanish shortly after their sessions. The more he observed, the more convinced he became that something was dreadfully wrong. One evening, Alex was working late, meticulously cleaning his tools and organizing his workspace. The shop was quiet, save for the low hum of the fluorescent lights and the soft thud of his movements. He glanced at the security camera monitor, a recent addition he'd installed after the first disappearance, and decided to review the footage from the past week. As he skimmed through the recordings, he noticed that the anomalies weren't just limited to Leo's session. The footage showed strange glitches and distortions around the times when clients were getting tattoos. At first, he attributed these to technical malfunctions, but the more he watched, the more he saw that these glitches coincided with moments when the clients were at their most vulnerable, just after getting inked. The most disturbing discovery came when he replayed the footage of a recent client, Emma. She had been in for a detailed tattoo of a mythical creature, a design that Alex had created with great care. The footage showed Emma leaving the shop, but as the camera's view shifted, a dark, shadowy figure seemed to follow her. The figure's form was indistinct, but its presence was undeniably ominous. Emma, too, disappeared shortly after leaving the shop, adding to the growing list of the missing. Shaken, Alex turned off the monitor and sat in the dim light of his shop, grappling with the implications of what he had just seen. He had always prided himself on his artistry, but now his work seemed to be linked to these disappearances in a way he couldn't understand. The intricate designs he created were meant to be beautiful, not sinister. He needed to find out what was happening. Determined to uncover the truth, Alex began to investigate the origins of the designs he had been using. He started with old tattoo books and folklore texts, hoping to find any clues that might explain the strange occurrences. His research led him to ancient symbols and mythical creatures, many of which had dark connotations. One evening, he stumbled upon a reference to an old mythology involving a realm of darkness, where malevolent entities consumed the souls of the unwary. As Alex delved deeper, he discovered that some of the symbols he had used in his custom tattoos were ancient, and their meanings were twisted and malevolent. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. His tattoos might be functioning as portals to this dark realm, drawing unsuspecting clients into an abyss where their souls were devoured. The more he researched, the more he felt the weight of impending doom. The shop's atmosphere seemed to change. Every creak and groan of the old building felt amplified, and shadows danced ominously on the walls. Alex's nights were plagued with nightmares of dark figures and unending voids, and he began to see ghostly apparitions in the corners of his vision. One night, after closing the shop, Alex was about to leave when he heard a soft, persistent scratching sound coming from the walls. His heart raced as he followed the noise to a hidden compartment behind a bookshelf. Inside, he found an old leather-bound book, its cover embossed with the same symbols he had been researching. The book was filled with detailed accounts of ancient rituals and warnings about the evil entities that lurked beyond the mortal realm. Alex's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. The book detailed how to perform rituals to close the portals and protect oneself from the entities that dwelled in the dark realm. As he read, he realized the gravity of his situation. His tattoos were not mere artworks, but gateways to a place of unimaginable horror. Desperate and terrified, Alex knew he had to act quickly. He had already lost too many clients to this malevolent force, and he couldn't afford to lose anyone else. But as he prepared to confront the darkness, he felt a chilling presence in the shop. A reminder that the entity he sought to defeat was watching, waiting for its next opportunity. The discovery of the ancient book in the hidden compartment only heightened Alex's sense of urgency. Each page seemed to pulse with an eerie energy as he read through the cryptic rituals and warnings. The book was old, its pages yellowed and brittle, but its contents were alarmingly relevant to the strange occurrences in his shop. Determined to understand the full extent of the danger he was facing, Alex sought help from an expert on the occult and ancient mythologies. He found Dr. Evelyn Harper, a renowned scholar known for her extensive knowledge of forgotten lore and dark rituals. Her office, lined with ancient texts and mystical artifacts, was both fascinating and intimidating. Alex arranged a meeting with Dr. Harper and explained the situation, presenting her with the manuscript he had found. She listened intently, her expression shifting from skepticism to concern as she examined the book. "This is indeed a significant find," Dr. Harper said, her fingers tracing the symbols on the manuscript. "These symbols are tied to an ancient mythology involving a realm of darkness and evil entities. The tattoos you've been creating are not just decorative, they're functioning as portals." Alex's heart raced as Dr. Harper continued. "The entities described here are known for preying on the souls of those who enter their domain. It seems that your tattoos have inadvertently become gateways to this realm. The clients who have disappeared were likely drawn into this darkness." Dr. Harper's explanation matched Alex's fears and the strange patterns he had noticed in the security footage. The manuscript's detailed descriptions of the entities and their methods of soul consumption painted a horrifying picture of what had happened to his clients. "But how do I stop this?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. "The book mentions rituals, but I don't know where to start." Dr. Harper flipped through the pages, pointing to a section detailing protective measures and rituals for closing the portals. "You'll need to perform these rituals with precise timing and intent. It's not just about drawing symbols. It's about focusing your will and using the correct elements to sever the connection between this world and the dark realm." Alex absorbed the information with a sense of grim determination. The rituals were complex and required specific items and conditions. He would need to gather herbs, symbols, and perform the rituals under specific astrological conditions. The task seemed daunting, but he knew he had no choice if he wanted to prevent further tragedies. As Alex left Dr. Harper's office, he felt a sense of resolve mixed with fear. The shop, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battleground. He returned to his studio, preparing for the daunting task ahead. In the days that followed, Alex immersed himself in the preparations. He scoured occult shops and libraries for the necessary items, gathering everything from rare herbs to ritualistic symbols. The shop became a hub of activity as he meticulously prepared for the rituals, transforming his workspace into a makeshift altar. Despite his preparation, Alex couldn't escape the mounting dread. The shop's atmosphere seemed to change. Shadows grew longer, and the air felt heavier. Unsettling occurrences continued. Whispers in the dark, flickering lights, and a pervasive sense of being watched. One evening, as Alex was setting up for a practice run of a ritual, he felt a cold breeze sweep through the shop, despite the absence of open windows. The sensation was chilling, and he glanced around nervously, his eyes landing on the mirror where the last client's tattoo had been completed. He saw a fleeting shadow moving behind him and quickly turned, but nothing was there. The entity seemed to be aware of Alex's attempts to close the portals. The sense of malevolence grew stronger, and Alex's dreams were plagued with nightmarish visions of the dark realm and its sinister inhabitants. The more he prepared, the more the entity seemed to push back, intensifying the haunting presence. Finally, the night arrived when Alex was ready to perform the first ritual. With trembling hands and a pounding heart, he set up the altar and prepared the symbols and offerings. He followed the manuscript's instructions carefully, focusing all his energy on the task. As he began the ritual, the shop's atmosphere seemed to shift. The air grew colder, and an oppressive weight settled over him. Shadows danced on the walls, and an eerie silence enveloped the room. Alex chanted the incantations, drawing the protective symbols with precision, his voice steady despite the fear gripping him. The ritual was intense and draining, but as Alex completed it, he felt a momentary sense of relief. The oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly, but he knew this was just the beginning. The entity was still out there, and he had to continue with the remaining rituals to fully close the portals and protect his clients from further harm. The ritual that Alex performed was only the beginning. Despite his efforts, the unsettling presence in the shop did not completely dissipate. Each night, the oppressive atmosphere seemed to return, and Alex could feel the malevolent force growing stronger, aware of his attempts to close the portals. Determined to understand more about the entity that lurked in the dark realm, Alex reached out to Dr. Evelyn Harper once again. He requested a follow-up meeting to discuss the entity and any additional steps he could take to combat it. When Alex arrived at Dr. Harper's office, she was already waiting with a stack of old texts and manuscripts. Her expression was grave, and she immediately delved into the specifics of the dark entity described in the manuscript. The entity you're dealing with is not just any malevolent spirit, Dr. Harper explained. It's a powerful being from ancient mythology, known for its ability to manipulate and consume souls. This creature, often referred to as the Devourer, thrives on fear and suffering. It has the ability to infiltrate the minds of its victims, making it difficult to distinguish between reality and illusion. Alex listened intently, his concern growing as Dr. Harper described the entity's abilities. According to her research, the Devourer could extend its influence beyond the dark realm, using the portals as conduits to affect the physical world. It could manipulate shadows, create illusions, and instill a profound sense of dread in those who were close to the portals. There's more, Dr. Harper continued. The Devourer's influence can extend into the physical realm through the tattoos you've created. The tattoos are not just markings. They are active conduits. As long as they remain, the entity can reach through and cause chaos. Alex's mind raced. The implication was terrifying. If he couldn't close the portals completely, the entity could continue to affect the real world, possibly leading to more disappearances and terror. He felt the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him. To combat the entity's influence, Dr. Harper advised Alex to use a combination of protective wards and rituals. She provided him with detailed instructions and additional materials needed for the process. The rituals would require careful timing and concentration, and Alex would need to perform them during specific astrological alignments to maximize their effectiveness. As Alex prepared for the next ritual, he began to experience heightened disturbances in the shop. Objects moved on their own, and the temperature fluctuated dramatically. The sense of being watched grew stronger, and shadows seemed to have a life of their own. One evening, while working late in the shop, Alex heard a faint whispering sound, like distant voices carried on the wind. He turned around, but the shop was empty, and the sound ceased. The whispers grew louder over the following nights, becoming more distinct and menacing. The entity was clearly aware of Alex's efforts and was trying to undermine his resolve. During one particularly restless night, Alex had a vivid and terrifying dream. He found himself in the dark realm, surrounded by swirling shadows and a sense of suffocating darkness. The Devourer appeared before him, a shifting, amorphous mass of darkness with glowing eyes. It spoke in a voice that echoed with malice, taunting Alex and showing him images of the souls it had consumed. The dream left Alex shaken, but it also fueled his determination to stop the entity. The next day, Alex prepared for the most critical ritual, one that was meant to create a permanent barrier between the dark realm and the physical world. He meticulously set up the altar, ensuring every symbol and item was in its proper place. The ritual required him to remain focused and steadfast, as any mistake could weaken the barrier and allow the entity to regain its influence. As Alex began the ritual, the shop's atmosphere grew increasingly hostile. Shadows twisted and writhed, and an almost tangible sense of fear filled the room. He chanted the incantations and drew the protective symbols with careful precision. The entity's presence seemed to press in on him, attempting to disrupt his concentration and break his will. The ritual reached its climax, and Alex felt a surge of energy as he completed the final incantation. The oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly, but the entity's malevolent influence remained a constant threat. Alex knew that while he had taken significant steps to protect his clients and himself, the battle was far from over. In the aftermath of the ritual, Alex was left feeling both relieved and wary. The shop was quieter, but the sense of unease persisted. He knew he had to remain vigilant and continue with the remaining rituals to fully close the portals and ensure the entity's defeat. The tension in the shop was palpable as Alex continued his preparations to combat the entity. The recent ritual had been successful to some extent, but he knew that it was only a temporary measure. The entity's influence was still felt strongly, and he had to act quickly to prevent further tragedies. Alex's mounting anxiety was exacerbated by the shop's continued disturbances. Shadows flitted across the walls, and the whispers that had once been faint became clear and almost conversational. The entity was growing bolder, sensing the threat Alex posed to its existence. One afternoon, as Alex was working on preparing ritual materials, the doorbell jingled and a new client walked in. The client, a young woman named Mia, seemed nervous but determined. She explained that she wanted a tattoo to commemorate a recent personal milestone, something meaningful and deeply personal. She had heard of Alex's work and was eager to get a custom design. Alex couldn't shake the dread he felt upon seeing her. She wanted a design that was intricate and complex, reminiscent of those that had been associated with recent disappearances. Despite his concern, Alex agreed to take on the job, feeling a sense of responsibility to protect Mia. As he began working on Mia's tattoo, he couldn't ignore the rising sense of unease. The shop's temperature dropped, and an almost palpable chill filled the room. The whispers seemed to grow louder, and Alex felt the entity's presence more strongly than ever. His hands trembled slightly as he worked, but he tried to stay focused. Mia, sensing Alex's discomfort, attempted to lighten the mood with conversation. She spoke of her plans for the future and her excitement about the tattoo, unaware of the danger she was in. Alex listened, trying to mask his growing fear, but he was deeply troubled by the thought of another client falling victim to the entity. Once the tattoo was completed, Alex made a decision. He had to act swiftly to protect Mia and himself. He decided to perform a precautionary ritual that night, hoping to reinforce the barriers he had established earlier. The ritual required specific conditions, including the alignment of celestial bodies, so he knew it was crucial to follow the instructions precisely. As the sun set and the shop prepared to close, Alex set up the ritual space. He gathered the necessary items, herbs, symbols, and ritualistic tools, and arranged them meticulously. The air in the shop grew heavy and charged, a sign of the entity's presence. Just as Alex was about to begin the ritual, he heard a sudden commotion outside. He rushed to the window and saw Mia standing on the sidewalk, visibly distressed. She seemed to be arguing with someone on her phone and appeared to be on the verge of tears. Alex's heart raced as he realized that the entity might be targeting her. He quickly grabbed his ritual supplies and rushed outside. As he approached Mia, she looked up with a mixture of fear and relief. "Alex, I don't know what's happening." I feel like something's following me." Alex ushered Mia back into the shop, locking the door behind them. The whispers grew louder, and the shop's lights flickered ominously. He knew he had to act quickly to protect Mia and complete the ritual before it was too late. Inside, Alex set up the ritual space once again, ensuring everything was in place. Mia watched with wide eyes as he performed the intricate steps of the ritual, chanting the incantations and drawing protective symbols. The entity's presence seemed to intensify, and Alex could feel its malevolent influence pressing in on him. The ritual was exhausting, both physically and mentally. Alex could sense the entity trying to disrupt his focus, causing the shadows to writhe and the air to grow colder. But he pressed on, determined to create a protective barrier that would shield Mia and himself from the entity's grasp. Finally, as the ritual came to an end, Alex felt a momentary calm. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to lift slightly, and the whispers faded to a distant murmur. He looked at Mia, who appeared more at ease, but still shaken by the events. "I'm sorry for all of this," Alex said, his voice filled with regret. "You're safe now, but you should stay away from here until I can resolve this completely." Mia nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude and lingering fear. "Thank you, Alex. I don't understand everything that's happening, but I appreciate your help." As Mia left the shop, Alex felt a sense of relief mixed with anxiety. He had taken important steps to protect her, but he knew that the battle was far from over. The entity was still out there, and he had to continue with the remaining rituals to fully close the portals and ensure the safety of his clients and himself. The night was far from peaceful as Alex prepared for the next phase of his plan. He knew that the entity would not give up easily, and that he had to remain vigilant in his fight against the darkness. Alex had been feeling the weight of the entity's presence more acutely in the days following the partial rituals. The shop, which had once been a place of creative expression, now felt like a battleground between light and darkness. The shadows seemed to stretch and pulse with a life of their own, and the whispers had become a constant, unsettling background noise. Despite his efforts to follow Dr. Harper's instructions, the entity's influence was far from subdued. The disturbances were escalating. Objects moved on their own. Eerie noises echoed through the shop, and the air was often filled with a chilling cold that never seemed to dissipate. Alex's nightmares grew more vivid, filled with visions of the dark realm and the torment of lost souls. One evening, as Alex was closing up for the night, he received a cryptic message on his phone. It was a voicemail from an unknown number, and the message was barely audible, filled with static and distorted sounds. As he listened closely, he made out a few coherent words: help, trapped, dark, realm. The voicemail sent a shiver down Alex's spine. It was as if someone, or something, was reaching out to him from beyond the darkness. He replayed the message several times, trying to decipher its meaning. The message seemed like a desperate cry for help, but from whom? And how could he possibly assist someone trapped in the dark realm? Determined to get to the bottom of the message, Alex revisited the manuscript Dr. Harper had provided him. He pored over the pages, focusing on any references to entities or souls trapped in the dark realm. He found a section detailing a method to communicate with trapped souls, a risky and dangerous process that involved entering a trance-like state and using a special ritualistic medium. Alex decided to take the risk. If there was a chance to gain insight into the entity, or find a way to rescue those trapped in the dark realm, he had to try. He prepared the ritual space, setting up the necessary items and drawing protective symbols around the room. The air was thick with anticipation as he began the ritual. As Alex performed the incantations, the shop's atmosphere grew increasingly eerie. The shadows seemed to press in on him, and the whispers grew louder, forming fragmented phrases that hinted at the entity's growing agitation. Alex fought to maintain his focus, chanting the incantations and using the ritualistic medium to bridge the gap between worlds. Suddenly, the room was engulfed in darkness, and Alex felt himself being pulled into a different plane of existence. He found himself in a nightmarish landscape, an endless void filled with swirling shadows and an oppressive sense of despair. The dark realm was as terrifying as he had imagined, with a palpable sense of malice lurking in every corner. In this bleak and desolate place, Alex saw figures moving in the distance, lost souls trapped in the dark realm. Their expressions were haunting, filled with fear and resignation. Among them, he recognized a familiar face, Leo, one of his missing clients. Leo's eyes were wide with terror as he reached out to Alex, his voice barely a whisper amid the cacophony of anguish. "Help us," Leo's voice echoed, filled with desperation. "The Devourer, it feeds on our fear. We're trapped here." Alex felt a surge of determination and dread. He knew he had to act quickly to rescue Leo and the other trapped souls. He tried to communicate with them, asking for more information about the entity and how to defeat it. Leo's responses were fragmented, but he mentioned a weakness of the Devourer. It was vulnerable to light and purity, which could disrupt its hold on the souls it had consumed. As Alex gathered this information, the entity's presence became more pronounced. The Devourer, sensing Alex's intrusion, appeared before him, a massive shadowy form with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. The entity's roar was deafening, and Alex felt a wave of fear and despair wash over him. The Devourer's power was overwhelming, and Alex struggled to maintain his focus. He realized that his presence in the dark realm was weakening his connection to the physical world, and that he had to escape before the entity could completely consume him. With a final burst of determination, Alex used the ritualistic medium to pull himself back to the physical realm. He awoke in his shop, drenched in sweat and shaking. The darkness had receded slightly, but the atmosphere remained heavy with a lingering sense of dread. The information he had gathered was invaluable. The Devourer was vulnerable to light, and Alex needed to use this weakness to his advantage in the final rituals. With renewed purpose, Alex began to prepare for the ultimate confrontation with the entity. He knew that the final battle would be intense, and that he had to use everything he had learned to protect his clients and close the portals once and for all. As he worked on the final preparations, Alex felt a profound sense of responsibility. The trapped souls, including Leo, were depending on him to end entity's reign of terror. The shop was his battleground, and he was ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead. The days leading up to the final ritual were marked by an uneasy calm. Alex had managed to successfully complete several rituals, reinforcing the barriers and temporarily diminishing the entity's influence. However, he knew that the true test was yet to come. The final confrontation would require every ounce of his strength and resolve. Alex had meticulously planned for the final ritual, which would be the most demanding and crucial step in closing the portals permanently. He gathered all the materials needed: sacred herbs, protective symbols, and ritualistic tools, ensuring everything was prepared with the utmost precision. The ritual was set to take place during a rare astrological alignment that occurred only once in a lifetime, providing a unique opportunity to sever the connection between the dark realm and the physical world. The shop was transformed into a ritualistic chamber. The walls were adorned with protective symbols, and the air was filled with the scent of burning herbs. Alex had arranged the space to maximize the ritual's effectiveness, but despite his preparations, a sense of foreboding lingered. As the night of the final ritual approached, Alex's anxiety grew. The entity had been more aggressive in recent days, with shadows moving independently and strange occurrences becoming more frequent. The whispers that had once been faint were now a constant presence, trying to undermine his resolve. On the appointed night, Alex arrived at the shop early, making final adjustments to the ritual setup. The sky outside was overcast, and the dim light filtering through the windows added to the eerie atmosphere. The alignment was nearing, and Alex felt the weight of the impending confrontation. With the ritual space prepared, Alex took a moment to steel himself. He knew that this was a battle not just of physical endurance, but also of mental fortitude. The entity was likely to use every trick at its disposal to disrupt the ritual and prevent him from closing the portals. The moment the astrological alignment began, Alex started the ritual. He chanted the ancient incantations, his voice steady despite the growing intensity of the entity's presence. The air grew colder, and the shop seemed to warp and distort as the entity's influence surged. Shadows writhed and twisted, and the whispers grew into a cacophony of malicious voices. The entity, now fully aware of Alex's intentions, attempted to disrupt the ritual. The shadows coalesced into a dark, amorphous form, its glowing eyes watching Alex with a malevolent gleam. Alex pressed on, his focus unwavering. He drew the final protective symbol with precise movements, his hands guided by determination. The incantations flowed from his lips, each word charged with a forceful intent to close the portals and banish the entity. The shop's atmosphere reached a fever pitch. The entity roared in anger, its form becoming more distinct and aggressive. It lashed out with tendrils of darkness, attempting to pull Alex into its grasp. But Alex, fueled by sheer willpower, continued with the ritual, resisting the entity's attempts to break his concentration. As the ritual reached its climax, Alex felt a surge of energy, a powerful wave that seemed to emanate from the protective symbols he had drawn. The shadows in the shop began to recede, and the whispers faded into a distant echo. The entity's form flickered and writhed, its power waning as the barriers solidified. In the final moments of the ritual, Alex chanted the closing incantation with all his remaining strength. The shop was enveloped in a blinding light, and the oppressive darkness that had plagued him began to dissipate. The entity let out a final anguished roar before vanishing into the void. As the light faded and the atmosphere returned to normal, Alex collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The shop was quiet. The oppressive weight that had lingered for so long finally lifted. The protective symbols remained glowing faintly, a sign that the portals had been closed and the entity had been banished. Alex took a deep breath, allowing himself a moment of respite. The battle was over, but he knew that he would carry the weight of the experience with him. He had faced a powerful, malevolent force, and he had emerged victorious. The shop, once a place of fear and darkness, was now a sanctuary once more. As dawn approached, Alex gathered his strength and began to clean up the ritual space. The process was methodical and reflective, allowing him to come to terms with the ordeal he had faced. The shop would need time to recover from the trauma, but Alex was hopeful that he could restore its former tranquility.